week in London at the World Travel Market. Sorry, there were no shows last week, but we will have 11 shows dropping in the next few weeks from travel leaders at the World Travel Market. So we have a super fun guest for you guys today, but before we dive into it, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. You guys have been hearing a lot about Go High Level. They're the new sponsor of the show. If you're running a business, an agency, or managing clients, you know how complicated it can get, juggling leads, emails, campaigns, and reporting across multiple tools. Go High Level basically simplifies all that in one platform. It puts your CRM, marketing automation, funnels, client communications all in one place. You can save time, reduce headaches, and actually grow your business. I've seen this thing in action. And what's amazing is how it lets you automate so much while keeping everything personal for your clients. So seriously, if you're ready to stop switching tabs and start focusing on real growth, check out gohighlevel.com. That's GOHIGHLEVEL.com, or use the link in the show notes for a 30-day free trial. All right, let's bring up today's guest. Fredrik, how's it going, man?
Good. Thanks for having me on the show, Dylan. Look forward to it.
Of course. Well, let me give the audience a little bit of your bio, and then we'll let you talk a little bit about your origin story. So Fredrik Skantze is the CEO of Funnel.io, a globally scaling marketing intelligence platform that helps organize, unify, analyze, and act on their marketing data. They're founded in 2014 in Stockholm, but Funnel now serves thousands of customers across multiple continents, with offices in Stockholm, Boston, Dublin, Hamburg, and Sydney. Fredrik, welcome. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you wouldn't mind, maybe give us a little bit about your origin story. Where'd you grow up? What'd you study? And how'd you get into the marketing world?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I'm from Sweden. Grew up in a number of countries in Europe, and then actually went to the US to study. So I studied engineering at MIT, and then worked for a while back in Sweden in robotics. And then went back to the US, did business school at Stanford, stayed in Silicon Valley to work in enterprise software. Did that for about 5 years, but wanted to go back to Europe, so I did that back, but wasn't quite ready for Sweden, so I went to London, where I started an e-commerce company, ran that for about 7 years, and then I went back to Sweden, and that's when I got started with what eventually became Funnel.
Awesome. So I know you guys are very well known, but for anybody in the audience who doesn't know Funnel, why don't you give us kind of the elevator pitch?
Yeah, so basically we are a marketing intelligence platform, and marketing intelligence is the product that marketing buys to improve their marketing performance. Mm-hmm. So it basically, you could say that it sort of consists of 5 things. It starts with before the data. It starts with planning and governance to make sure you basically set up yourself up to have good, clean data. Then a really big piece, and the piece where we started is a data integration place, where you sort of both pull in all your data, but you actually create sort of use case ready and business ready data sets for, be it marketing measurement or whatever you want to do with your data. And then it's a big piece now in the world, is around measurement and attribution. Then it's marketing reporting, and then finally over to actually sort of closing the loop and feeding back your results to them. Different advertising platforms, and telling them basically how much you value the different types of traffic and results that they send to you.
That's awesome. So tell me how things have changed in the recent conversation around, first party data kind of becoming, the currency of the day, people wanting to be closer to their data, owning their data, and less dependent on third party sources. Especially as we continue to, play turkey with the idea of the cookie. But then every time we kind of come up against a deadline to actually, eliminate it, it seems to get shelved because there's not another great option. But, how is first party data becoming more important to this type of mass model attribution?
Absolutely. So I think there is there's two things happening with data. So one, there is more and more of it, right? So you can think of pretty much every product that marketing can buy, and this is sort of the broader marketing, including CRM systems and e-commerce platforms. And so you can even think of it like every product that's available for marketing to buy is a potential data source. And when we started building Funnel in 2014, there were about 1,000 different marketing products you can buy. Now there are 13,000, and 3,000 of them were created in the last year. So there's, and many of them now are sort of AI products. And so there's a proliferation of data. So that's one thing that's happening. The second thing is happening is that there is signal loss, right? So you referred to it. Basically, there are GDPR cookie blockers. So the browsers basically either block your cookies or forget them very quickly, and then you have the devices that basically don't allow tracking anymore. So those are really the two things. So what is it that you have to do? So first of all, you got to have all your data well organized and well planned and in one place and made sort of use case specific, right? But then there's two more things that you need to do because of the world we live in, right? So the first one is you need to build a proper attribution model. Most of us, going back sort of 6-7 years, in digital, mostly relied sort of on a last click model, because most of the channels we used were lower funnel, be it search or retargeting. It worked really well to measure them. Now, one, there is the signal loss, so last click is working less well, but also almost all marketing is digital. And as a result, there's so many upper funnel channels now that don't create clicks, right? So YouTube or video on Meta or TikTok, and they actually represent, maybe half of the actual effect of the marketing, and they need to be properly measured, right? So you have to do measurement attribution in a way where you use data science, machine learning, and new ways to do it with generative AI. And then the final thing is that while the ad platforms have gotten a lot better and their AI works a lot better, so they start behaving like a black box and sort of do all the work for you, what has gotten lost is sort of the old craft, and they do that better than a human. That's like inevitable. It's just going to be a black box. But there was a craft. If you remember, like you were a search marketer and you set up all your campaigns, and then you looked at your traffic and it hit your web, and your job was to see which campaigns brought in good leads or good customers that you valued a lot, and then you went back and you increased the bids on those ads or those campaigns. And that was your mechanism for telling these platforms to give you more of that traffic. That's gotten lost. And now that needs to be automated. And that's what you do with data activation through these conversion APIs, where you basically, you look at that data, and then in real time you analyze it. You try to predict essentially sort of the lifetime value or something around those that matters to you about those customers. Could be also return rate from those channels or whatever it is. And then you send that back. And if you do that and you do it really well, you can markedly improve the performance of your marketing. So you need to get this right. You have the right attribution model, and you have to really sort of feed that data back in real time. If you do those things, in combination, you're probably talking more than 30% improvement in marketing performance.
Wow, that's interesting. I think you touched on a piece that is on everybody's mind right now, which is the decrease in click traffic from search. I read a study yesterday that search traffic that ends with a click is now down by over 60%. But conversion and overall revenue is actually up. So we're moving from a world where we used to use search and then researching on people's websites as the way that we found out information. And that was great because we could track links and we could cookie people when they came to our sites. But now the consumer is staying inside of AI platforms and doing their research inside of AI chatbots, and they don't go to a site until they're damn near ready to purchase. In some ways, I think that's a good thing, but how does that change attribution and the way that marketers should be thinking about measuring their mix when they can be less dependent on cooking users that are coming to their site because they're not going to come as early in the funnel now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a number of answers here, right? So one, you need to operate within the new world. And so, one really important thing is to make sure that these AI models and agents find you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to optimize your site for that. Oh, like we did in the older days of SEO, right? Now, the other one is that right now you kind of need to use the paid channels that exist, and optimize for those and measure which ones work, and then invest in those. And it may be that there is less inventory on some of these channels, and then they're potentially going to get more expensive, and then you may need to shift your shift your optimal budget. And then it's particularly important to really be on top of this, have the right data infrastructure to do this. Now, the other thing, I think we are in a transition here right now. There is like this huge build out of models and investments in the models. At some point, that is going to shift more towards monetizing the models. And I think that especially the platforms that are consumer oriented, like OpenAI and Google, they are going to look to have advertising models so that they can have a free tier for these models, right? I don't think that you are to sustainably have a free tier, they need advertising. I think they want that. I don't think they're just going to rely on a paid tier. And then so you'll have an advertising model. Now, is that going to be better than search? Is it going to be worse than search? I think that remains to be seen for us. It probably will be able to send us really highly targeted, highly valuable traffic. Usually when these new platforms come out, if you're early on them and there's, and you learn how to operate them, there's an arbitrage, you can actually do really well on them. So I think it's really exciting. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But, it took first, there was search, like, Alta Vista and all this, monetized with banner ads, right? And it didn't really work very well. And then Google figured out like to have sponsored links, and that worked beautifully. Then if you remember Meta, or back in the old days of Facebook, they basically also just started with display, like it was on the desktop and there were ads on the right hand side, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't really work that well. Like there was some targeting to them. We built, or in the early days before we built Funnel, we built a Facebook ads tool. We did a lot of work on this. And then mobile came, and everybody said Facebook is going to be dead, because on mobile there's no right hand side, there's no place to show the ad. They are dead. And what did they do? They innovated. They came up with a news feed, and they came up with news feed ads that suddenly were in your flow, and they were relevant and all this. And they 10x their revenue and so on. So, and it became number one or number two ad format in the world, right? So it may well be this is going to be the best thing ever for marketers. That, like, who knows? I don't know. But I think it's going to be really exciting to see what they can come up with. And the great thing is that, to build an ad tech, to build like Google and Facebook did, you need to be a tech company. But all these model companies are tech companies with super smart people. I think they're going to figure some interesting stuff out. And they are, in order to monetize it, it's going to have to be valuable to the advertiser. So I think they'll come up with something that's really good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll be a game of chicken between OpenAI and maybe Grok and Google on like who decides to monetize first, because I think, whichever one stay ad free for the longest or monetization free for the longest will probably have more trust with the consumer or a better user experience. But I agree with you. I think the ability to kind of tap into that type of search behavior is going to be definitely very novel for a period of time. So you talked about, the idea that a lot of ad formats are ending with clicks left often. YouTube, or basically the entire connected TV industry. So people watch, television on either social media apps like YouTube or CTV apps or VOD or AVOD platforms. And then you also talk about the idea of, some of these media channels that do end in a click, they become more expensive. Is there ways to measure things that, are traditionally non-digital, such as outdoor advertising or radio? There are a lot of these non-measurable media channels that just because they're not measurable and digital doesn't mean they don't work. How do you guys feed in traditional media channels to the models, and is that something marketers can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we absolutely do, and we do it for a lot of our customers, and especially as as companies and marketing organizations get larger, they tend to have more and more offline data. No, so I think here is the thing with marketing measurement. There are different techniques. There is multi-touch attribution, which is click-based. There is marketing mix modeling, which is more econometric and high level, that can take offline and online and upper funnel and lower funnel, but it's more higher level. There is incrementality testing that is very science-based and the most precise, but it kind of only works to calibrate these models. And then you have actually the data from the platforms themselves, which, while it's not normalized, it's very high quality. And basically, our view of this is that all of this is data, and the data contains information, and you need to use all the information that's available, and you need to use all the algorithms that are available, and then you need to sort of triangulate between these to find one sort of truth. And you can do that, and it can include offline and TV and anything, because the marketing mix modeling will pick that up, and incrementality testing will pick that up. But then if you really want to come down all the way to like clicks, you need to also layer in the multi-touch attribution, or the platform metrics. And if you do that, you get a holistic kind of view of your marketing.
Yeah, that's good. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier in the interview that you guys started out as a Facebook advertising tool and then kind of moved into a global marketing data intelligence platform. What was the biggest reason for the pivot, and what were some of the risks with going from Facebook into the larger attribution world?
Yeah, so we built a Facebook ads tool very early. We really focused on sort of more the SME and mid-market, where we were alone. We're the only partner they had in that area. And they kind of, weren't very interested in it originally, and they gave us access to it and said, don't come and talk to us for a couple of years. So we did, and we did really well. We did about in 2014, we did about 1% of Facebook's revenue, and they came and talked to us, and they said, "Wow, like we realized that the mid-market and SME market is big for Facebook. It's like a third of their revenue, and you're the only partner we have." So they were really excited. But we found it a little bit challenging. Like, we loved this new market that Google and Facebook were creating, and we wanted to be part of it. But specifically that category was basically creating a tool that was needed to help advertisers advertise on Facebook. And there were others that were doing it. We did it for the SME market, but Facebook was doing it themselves as well. We just happened to be very focused on it and better for it, and we charged for it. But we felt like long term, they should really be the ones doing this. And it's great to be part of this big market they're creating, but you don't want to be in a place where they are also there and they give something away for free that you make. That's not a good place.
Yeah, it's interesting how these platforms build these partnership networks, and then they like to have other people kind of build their markets for them. But then, eventually, if it's a lucrative enough opportunity, they're probably going to get around to it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they were always very transparent that that's what they do, and wanted to be helpful and kind of build this. But we said, then look, what we want to do, we want to be part of this market, but we want to be a step away from the big platforms and solve a problem for customers that nobody's solving, that the ad platforms themselves can't solve. And the good thing is we had like 2,000 customers. So we want to talk to them. What is your problem? And almost everybody said the same thing. They said, there are lots of companies that help us make ads, that help us optimize ads. But when it comes to reporting, and especially building like the P&L of your marketing and sort of being able to drill into it, everybody's sitting in Excel. And it was the same. It was like, here are all the ad platforms. Here's how much I spend per ad platform. Here are the clicks, here are the impressions. And then here's what my analytics software is telling me that I'm selling per platform. And here's the customer acquisition cost and the ROAS. That was the same. And, you had that spreadsheet. And if you were an e-commerce company in Europe and you were in 11 markets, you had 11 spreadsheets, and it started to become intractable and people were hating their lives trying to build it. And, we had some big travel sites were telling us, like, they started, working on the reporting, like 3 people Monday morning. And then on Wednesday afternoon, they were done for the week.
Wow.
And, please automate this. And we said, okay, this is great. Like, this is what we should do. And we couldn't find anybody who did this. So we went out, because it was quite hard at the time to get access to these platforms. Like, Google was open. Facebook wasn't quite open. LinkedIn wasn't open. Twitter wasn't open. So, but they all wanted us to build ads tools for them, like for Facebook. So we had good relationships with them. We said, look, we're going to talk our way in here. So we went to Silicon Valley. We spoke to them all. We got early access to their reporting APIs. We started building this. And look, there was no looking back. It really worked the way we thought it was. Look, I mean, we thought we would build this in a year. Turns out everybody's spreadsheet was a bit different. They wanted to drill into the data. They wanted all these data. So it took us 2 years to really find it, but then it just took off. And there was no looking back.
How important is user experience and kind of dashboarding to tools like this? Like, a lot of times it's, it's not always the best company that wins. It's the one that looks the sexiest and has the best, most intuitive UX. How important was that as you guys went to take your product to market to really make it intuitive and look good and easy to use?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we originally built the dashboard because that was kind of replacing the spreadsheet that everybody had. But then actually when we really looked at it, we thought we were only going to sell to small businesses, because mid-sized businesses, large businesses, they have these BI tools, like Power BI or Tableau, and that solve this problem. But turns out actually there were a lot of mid-sized and even enterprises that came to us and they said, look, we have these tools, but we can't get the data into them. So basically, we're using a spreadsheet. And what we learned is that the problem was not the dashboarding. The problem was getting the data into the dashboarding tool. So we decided actually to stop building a dashboard and just said, we're going to build a marketing data platform to start off with, like a data hub that takes all the data, makes it use case ready, and then puts it wherever the customer wants it. So we did that for like 6-7 years, didn't do even dashboards. Now, what we then learned was that actually it becomes pretty clunky when you have to come in and you model your data in one tool and you send it to another tool. So the number one request we had is, could you please make a really quick marketing reporting interface that basically allows us to, work with the marketing data, that understands marketing data, that understands reporting and so on. So we built it, and now I would say it actually is quite important. And in our marketing reporting, like, you can actually see a creative, you can see an ad. It's totally different. It's not like this rows and columns of numbers and like, just graphs. It actually is, creatives, and it looks better. So that makes a big difference. Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you made some unconventional choices as it pertains to company culture, like eliminating sales commissions. As a sales guy, I'm horrified at that at first glance. But what motivated that decision, and how has it shaped the team and results? How are working more as a collective and not as hired sales guns out there in the marketplace trying to optimize for commission?
Yeah, I speak at conferences about this every now and then, and still almost everybody has commissions. And look, I think for us, it went back to culture. If there's one thing the funnel culture is around teamwork. And we felt that there was a lot of friction in the company around sales commissions because it was perceived that salespeople were closing deals because they wanted the commission, and maybe it wasn't the perfect customer fit, or maybe so we eventually said, look, if this is so important to us, we should look at this. And when we actually studied it, all the literature says that if you have a complex problem to solve, providing people with a bonus actually results in a lower performance. And enterprise software sales is pretty complex. So we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at what our culture deck says, and the culture deck says, let's do this. So we did it. And it was pretty controversial. I mean, we just raised money from a new investor, and we just went off and did this thing. But it did completely transform all the discussions around teamwork. There were, again, sudden, and there was no squabbling, or nobody kind of like was fighting about leads. And there was, if we wanted to make changes, we didn't have to change any comp plans. Like, there were lots and lots of benefits to it. Is it driving better marketing performance or sales performance for us? I think it's hard to tell. We grow 3 times faster than any of our competitors. So I think it's good for us. But it's look, here's what I would say, and this is what I say when people call me up and ask, this is interesting, should we do it? I think you got to go back to what's important to you. And when you build a company, the easiest thing is just to use the standard playbook and just do that. Unless it's something that, like, if it's the hill that worth dying on, like what are you really standing for, and what is really important to you, and then change those things. But don't try to reinvent. Like, you should reinvent how your industry and how your product works, and like you should reinvent like how customers do whatever problem you solve, but you shouldn't necessarily reinvent how to build a company. That's unnecessary. It's also very hard when you bring in people from the outside to help run the company. They have to learn how to work in your company. If you read, for example, No Rules, the Netflix books, it's amazing, and all these things they do, but it's pretty tough to come into Netflix and work. There's a lot of things you have to learn with Netflix, and it works for Netflix, but it makes it harder to onboard people or buy another company, or stuff like that. So but yeah, no, we've done it. We did this change in at the end of 2019. We've been doing it now for over 5 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always say that, no matter what your role, comp plan dictates behavior. If you incentivize close rate or client retention or new business, whether that's a salesperson or an accounts person or a strategist or whatever, people are going to optimize to the plan and the incentive structure that you create. They're going to gamify it. As a salesperson who's made a good chunk of their living on above and beyond my base salary, I'd have to really give it some serious consideration. But I think it's an interesting model, and it sounds like obviously it's working for you guys. It's you're 6 years in. It's not a fad, and your results with that 3.5 times growth against any of your competitors, that's definitely worth looking into. So thank you for sharing your concepts around that. So with rising privacy regulations, walled gardens are going to continue to have measurement challenges. We all remember iOS 13 and, Facebook and Apple kind of ending their lucrative data sharing agreements. As more and more companies decide to wall off their data in interesting ways, how do you guys think about what attribution and measurement is going to look like in 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, and I think the big question is also kind of how is AI and specifically generative AI going to play into this, and I think maybe that is a good place to start. I see a lot, and I hear a lot of executives now at tech companies that work with AI saying, "Look, we'll build all these agents." And for example, what these agents can do is they can look at your marketing data, and then they can kind of figure out like which marketing, what's the effect of your different marketing budgets, and then they can kind of help you reallocate and optimize your marketing. And I actually don't think that's true, because you can't go from marketing data to making decisions. There is a data science and machine learning problem in between that we spent the 15 years perfecting, and a generative AI can't solve that problem. That is a data science and machine learning problem. You can't just go in and look at the data and then the LLM just magically figures it out. But what you can do is that, as I said, look, there's different techniques. There is multi-touch attribution, there's marketing mix modeling, there's incrementality testing, there's the platform data, and then you can run a machine learning framework to kind of interpolate between these. And but basically that is a pretty complex system. It's a pretty complex system to operate and to understand. It actually requires a lot of data science handholding and expertise and work. And that is something that you can automate with agents. So if you give the agents all these techniques, multi-touch attribution, market mix modeling, incrementality testing, platform data, and you take the expertise that our marketing data scientists have built up over like 10 years, and you kind of code that into an agent, they can actually reason around all of this, and they can operate it, they can automate it, they can fix broken data and so on. And then you essentially get agentic marketing measurement. And I think that is where the future is going. And I think it's going to help take the technology that's now mostly leveraged by enterprise companies and bring it sort of to the mid-market and allow mid-market companies to operate basically a measurement product that is relatively automated with generative AI that allows them to both measure and accurately measure the bottom funnel, the upper funnel, and if they have offline data, and just incorporate all of this, which today they can't. They can maybe operate an analytics software or multi-touch attribution software. They can't operate this whole complex product that interpolates between all of these things. So I think that's where we see it. So agentic marketing measurement, we believe, is the future.
Interesting. So you've said that really the foundation of all this is still good data sources. In your view, what would organizations be doing right now to prioritize so they're getting good data into their models? What are the most important things they should be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good question, and it sort of is very similar to this idea that you can't just have agents or LLMs think about marketing attribution without actually understanding and having tools to do it. Similarly, if you just give your generative AI models raw data, they're not going to be able to reason how all this data fits together. So you kind of need the structure of basically you have all the raw data, then you have essentially the data model or semantic layer that sort of explains how it fits together. And then you provide that to the models in a use case ready data set. And then they can reason very effectively around it. So you kind of got to go through the data prep stages to give the LLM very accurate and refined data. and then you're going to be very successful. So that's what I would say. And to do that, you need sort of this marketing data infrastructure in place.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you about deciding to build your company in Sweden. You hail from a Nordic ecosystem, but you operate globally. We've seen a lot of really strong examples of companies coming out of Sweden on the B2C side that we can all think about, IKEA and Lego and some of the others, Spotify famously. What are some of the unique strengths and challenges of building a tech company in Sweden and then going to a global market?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So, I basically came back to Sweden in 2011, and I, first having been 6-7 years in the US, including Silicon Valley, and then I'd been 7 years in London, and so I started building this company, and then I went out to find investors locally in Sweden, and what they all pretty much told me the same thing back in 2011. It was like, okay, so yeah, build the company another year in Sweden, and then take the family and move to Silicon Valley, and and have the head office there, and that's the place to build the company. And I my feeling was like, okay, well, that's actually a pretty low ambition for Sweden. And I have been in Silicon Valley, and you guys have not, right? I mean, I literally spent 6-7 years there, and they had not, right? And kind of what I found in Sweden was great engineers that had built these companies, like the Spotify's, the Kings.com, a lot of like gambling companies that have pretty complex data backends, and so very talented engineers, and so that was great. What was a challenge was the sort of like SaaS go to market. So like SaaS salespeople that and marketing that didn't exist. So that like my co-founder Pelle Maden and myself, that's sort of what we had to really learn. So we spent a lot of time actually being in Silicon Valley and learning the whole go to market stuff and sort of building that up from scratch. But we found that we had great people that they could learn it. I think the benefit, salary level is much lower in Sweden. People are more loyal, stay longer. But the challenge was more on the go-to-market side, and that we have to build that up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've talked to a few other entrepreneurs who've launched MarTech, ad tech stacks from other countries. One comes to mind that launched in New Zealand. And another benefit that he talked about was the idea that you could have kind of a proof of concept in your own region. So you could target Nordic companies to start, get some traction, then go to EMA, then go into US and North American markets. So there's kind of this idea of like in the YouTube world, creators in the early days of YouTube used to live in countries and go viral within like, a smaller country, and then kind of move to a bigger country too, because they would always be hitting the charts in their smaller country, and then they could kind of, gamify the system. But, I think there's some advantages to being able to like product test your product in a smaller market before you go to some of these more lucrative markets where maybe you only have, one shot to be successful before your competition pops on. But, I think also you've talked about some of the cultural aspects, and it sounds like even the idea of, that I keep coming back to this idea of no commissions for a sales team. It feels very Nordic,
Yeah. No, but you're right. I mean, that is a normal way to go to market for, say, a Nordic or a German startup, is you build it in your market. I mean, I think every startup, you have to build and figure out your go to market, and it's both a fit between the product and what go to market fits with that product, and the founders and what go to market fits that with that founder. And we tinkered with a lot of models. We started with like outbound locally in the Nordics. We found that what we were really good at was more of this consumerized go-to-market, almost like like e-commerce, or so I had built an e-commerce company. My co-founder had built a media agency. Like, we really knew how to use ad spend and content marketing to build an inbound motion. And when we did that, when you do content marketing, it works in the whole world. So you can't restrict yourself to a certain region. So we went all across Europe very quickly, with an inside sales motion. And then we started getting leads from the US. And then we had to, my co-founder moved over to Boston for a year and set up the US office. So we had a different go-to-market motion where we went big very quickly.
Is that also somewhat, in line with like GDPR, with the idea that in Europe, you're not technically allowed to send an email to somebody that you don't know? So I've seen a lot of companies that are B2B in Europe, they have to focus on content marketing. They have to bring people into them because, you could get fined for sending out 10,000 emails to people that you don't know.
Yeah, no, you have to adapt your go-to-market to every country, and there are big differences even within European countries how this is interpreted and evaluated. I think Germany is the most strict standard for GDPR. And then it varies from country to country, and then UK, you're in a different league now. So absolutely. Now, when we started, it was before GDPR, and then we had to sort of retrofit that back in to the model. Yeah.
So you've talked about growth plateaus that are being very synonymous with ARR level. Many companies struggle because they treat it like simply, doing a little bit more of the same. What advice would you give founders that feel like they're hitting a ceiling at, say, 20 to 30 million in ARR? And why is that a sweet spot, and when they should start thinking about multi-touch marketing attribution and some of the modeling that you guys provide?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, first of all, if you really do it right, you shouldn't hit a ceiling. You should always anticipate that you are going to hit the ceiling. And so when you start, you should just find one go-to-market motion that works, whatever it is. Like, it can be PLG, or it can be inside sales, outbound, partners, whatever. If you find one, double down on it, triple down on it, and just go for a while, right? Until you get to like the $5 to $10 million. You're never going to run out of a go-to-market motion that fast, unless you're just like in a small market, but then you have to go multi-market. But then, when you get to 10 million, so before the 20 to 30 million, you should start thinking, how can we add a second, leg to this go-to-market motion, right? So if it is inbound, can we do outbound? Can we do partners? Should we do PLG? Like, what should we do? And then, or should we add another geography? And so you just constantly add a little bit more, and a little bit ahead of time, because it actually takes time to develop these. So you might just incubate them, see if they work. And basically, the way I like to do it is, I like to very carefully measure and this comes back to your question of like, how would you apply marketing measurement to this? But I like to really carefully measure the customer acquisition cost from the different channels. So if your main channel is whatever it is, and it has a customer acquisition cost of $10,000 per customer in B2B, okay, then you have a new channel. What is the customer acquisition cost? Okay, it's $100,000. Okay, well, that's a lot. Okay, and, maybe we just keep that experimenting a little bit and see whether we can get it to 50,000, but we're not going to invest in it. But if it starts coming down, if it's 20,000, you can kind of squint and see that, okay, I could maybe get it down to be something similar to what I have today. And it doesn't have to be lower. It just has to be the same, because all of this has diminishing returns. So, you want to be smarter And so you need more things to push against, and the acquisition cost goes up if you push too much without improving everything. And then you might find one that actually has a lower acquisition cost. Okay, well, can we get that to scale? And I think that's how you should work. And then you can have 10, but you should maybe have 2, and then you have 3. And for us, it started with inbound sales, but with inbound, basically also came this notion that we get small leads, large, mid-sized leads, large leads. We need to take care of them. So we retrofitted PLGs. We got a second go-to-market motion, and then we felt like we needed to start doing outbound. So we did that, and then we had a lot of requests from partners. We added that. So we have 4 go-to-market motions now, and they all sort of account from between 20 and 40% of our business, and we have a lot of stools to stand on. And if one goes down, we can kind of compensate with the others, and that's the way to really get past the $20 to $30 million. If you want to get to the $200 to $300 million, then you got to go multi-product. That's the next stage, where you then have when you get towards the 100 million in ARR, you got actually a pretty big installed base, and you got a pretty good distribution. And if you can then add more products to that, it both increases your initial deal size and it allows you to upsell to this big customer base.
Interesting. Well, I think that's a very practical framing of the go-to-market strategy, especially in the world that I cover, which is the marketing and ad tech space. So thank you for that. All right. Well, Fredrik, if people want to learn more about Funnel, or if they want to connect with you directly, where do you want to send folks?
Yeah, so Funnel is funnel.io. So go there. Lots of content on the site about marketing measurement, and marketing intelligence. And then the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. So Fredrik Skantze on LinkedIn. There aren't too many of us.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show again. For everybody who's watching at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. If you're listening to the show, give us an honest rating on whatever podcast platform you might be listening on. That's how we find a larger audience organically. And last but there's a marketer out there who needs to get serious about their measurement, or if there is a go-to-market leader who you think would benefit from the conversation that I had with Fredrik today, or maybe somebody in sales leadership who wants to hear about the idea of eliminating commissions and then growing by 3.5%. Pretty wild idea, but I think it's worth giving it some serious consideration. So with that, Fredrik, I will go ahead and let you go. Thanks